1461. Another burst channel. Another one. How many would fail? Cobalt ground her mandibles in frustration, staring at the energy flowing in front of her. There wasn't the slightest variation or tremor, the enhancements were functioning perfectly. Or did she only think that was the case? There had been sections approved by carvers that had failed. 2, to be exact. Even the tiniest flaw was enough to send the energy awry, to degrade the system and make it vulnerable to failure under high loads. Not for the first time, she was grateful for the pace at which Solent had allowed them to work on the fortress. If they'd forged ahead as rapidly as she'd thought they should have, doubtless the entire fortress would be lost now. "Show me the map," she demanded, and one of her team was quick to oblige, placing a thin, hardened stone tablet down on the ground in front of her. On the stone, the channel network for this area of the fortress was marked, with all failures, stress points and checked sections clearly indicated. The new burst channel was a fresh mark on the page and a fresh thorn in her carapace. Luckily, the carvers had sensed it coming and shut off almost all the flow before it finally ruptured, otherwise the damage would have been catastrophic. No sections of the fortress had been cut off from the rest at this stage, but it was getting close. Already, moving from one place to the next was becoming difficult. Further breaks would only complicate the map further, and cut off more tunnels. They would be cleaned up eventually, of course, but that took time, and the fortress was still under siege. Any internal failures made defending the platforms that much harder. "Here," she said, drawing the attention of her team. "These 4 sections have been checked. We'll throttle the channels here, here and here, and allow the bulk to move through those 4 channels. The lighter load should keep the others operational while we get this segment repaired." "That's a lot of energy to focus on so few channels, Senior," one of her team members spoke up. "How long will they be able to tolerate that much mana?" "Not long," she affirmed. "Which means we need to get the repair done quickly. If all goes well, then we can clear every issue on this map in a few hours." The ants nodded, determined to get the work done, before they dispersed. After having constructed this fortress, the work teams on duty were the best of the best, they knew what they were about. As long as they were all on the same page, there wasn't any issue they couldn't tackle effectively. "Looks like things are as challenging down here as I'd heard," Solent said. Cobalt turned to see her younger sibling crawling down the tunnel, a fraction of her usual entourage with her. "What are you doing here? Isn't this an emergency?" she snapped. Solent only nodded. "It is. However, there are limitations to speaking through messengers. That goes for you sending word to me, and for me sending it back to you. It's important that we meet directly every now and again. You think I have time to talk? We're busy here, which is why I came to you," Solent said reasonably. "Go about your tasks as we converse, I won't take much of your time." Trying to argue Solent out of getting what she wanted was a futile exercise, Cobalt knew it well, so she simply cleaned her antennae, turned and marched down the corridor, the smaller ant trailing in her wake. "The rate of failures is higher than you expected. Is that fair to say?" Solent asked. "It is," Cobalt snapped, grinding her mandibles. These mistakes were on the carvers, on her and Tungstant, they were responsible for getting this done right the first time. "Personally, I expected more. You and your teams are to be commended," Solent said, perfectly seriously. If she were speaking to a human, Cobalt might have thought the remark was sarcastic, but from an ant, it was completely sincere. "If things keep failing at this rate, the fortress is going to fall. But you already know that, don't you?" "I believe you are wrong," Solent replied. "If the failure rate was increased by a third, it would be close. As it is, we can still get ahead of the damage before it's too late." "Too late for what?" "The cascade. One failure leading to another leading to another leading to another. If there's even the slightest chance of that happening," Cobalt said, working her mandibles and forelegs as she began to sort through components, organizing them for the repairs ahead, "then shouldn't we shut off the intake?" "We can't," Solent shook her head. "No matter what happens, we can never shut off the intakes. Not if we want to succeed." "That isn't what you told me before," Cobalt said, confused. "You said we could, as a last resort. The situation has changed." "Changed how?" "For the worse," Solent said simply. "If we don't convert every drop of energy we can get, then it isn't going to be enough. We will fail and be forced back up to the 4th stratum, if we survive. The system is barely holding together, Solent. If the pressure continues to rise." Solent nodded, able to fill in the blanks herself. "Make sure you and your teams get some rest when you can, Cobalt," the little general told her. "You'll be busy from now on, I believe." The carver didn't need to think hard to work out what she meant. They couldn't shut off the intakes, the amount of mana flowing into the system was only going to grow over time. If the vents didn't shut off, and who could say when and if they would, then they would be chasing down errors in the channel network from now until the wave was over. As long as they were able to stay ahead of the curve, then they could avoid a catastrophic cascade. If not, then they were all dead. "I'll get to work," she said. 1462. "I never thought I'd see you again, Ghazi," Zaluth grinned, showing all of his fangs. "You found your happy retirement, why would you ever leave?" The old slug extended an eye socket up through the grill that covered the hole he'd been locked into. A craft could compress their body to extremely small sizes, and they had to fit inside a hole like this. The grating over the top was sharp as a razor on the inside, but blunt on the outside, meaning if Ghazi were to relax his contracted body for even a second, he'd be cut to ribbons by the grate. An extremely common way the craft used to lock up their own. Even a craft could be contained if you limited how many tricks they could use, and they couldn't use many when they were squished down to the size of a human head. "I was very comfortable," Ghazi rasped, barely able to speak. "Have you ever heard of a scone? The ants are big fans." "Delicious." Zaluth frowned. Food was food, who cared what it tasted like? To him, the word, delicious, was barely a part of his vocabulary. It certainly wasn't something he'd ever experienced. "Do you think making the ants sound good is going to make me spare you, Ghazi? Have you lost what was left of your mind?" The old craft chuckled, only to yelp with pain when his body expanded a fraction and he was cut. "I'm as sharp as these blades," the old craft burbled. "Sharp as I've ever been. You could have fooled me. Weren't you the one who twisted and betrayed everything in order to keep himself alive? You're just a few minutes away from being eaten, that doesn't seem sharp." "I didn't have much of a choice," Ghazi chuckled. "I might have betrayed the craft, but even I'm not willing to betray the maker." Zaluth was silent for a moment, chewing over a wad of acid bile. Chost had told him of Ghazi's claim, that he'd been visited by Theorazin and returned to reveal the location of the singing. The ants, again. Despite Ghazi being a cunning slug who lied as easily as he breathed, Zaluth believed his story. There was no other reason for a craft so obsessed with staying alive to throw himself into the acid pit. "Theorazin spoke to you too, Ghazi," Zaluth burbled. "You decided to break out and share what you knew with the tribes. To fulfill the will of the ancient. It's almost noble." The word tasted foul in Zaluth's mouth and he spat to rid himself of it. The wad of acid sizzled and burned on the stone floor, filling the air with an acrid tang. "The maker of mucus is a persuasive creature," Ghazi said. "Did I really have much choice? I suppose not. Did the craft respect, or fear Theorazin?" If he were pushed for an answer, Zaluth couldn't say on which side he'd land. "The maker of mucus created the fifth stratum, their home. Legends said the ancient had blessed the craft personally, though none knew how. The fifth was a cruel and unforgiving place, and the craft were the most cruel and unforgiving creatures within it. It was only natural that they would revere the ancient who had made them that way, who continued to guide them from the depths of the dungeon. Ghazi, for all his selfishness, had no choice but to fulfill the ancient's command. Even so, it's not enough to save you, Ghazi. You knew that from the beginning." The old craft chuckled, resigned to his fate. "Make it quick, I deserve that much." "Mercy." Zaluth laughed. "Fine, why not try something new?" When it was done, Zaluth went to find Chost, who was furiously busy. With so many powerful tribes converging on the area, she wouldn't remain in charge for long, but as she'd been responsible for the assault so far, it was her job to ensure the slugs would have somewhere safe to be when they arrived. It wouldn't be long before hundreds and hundreds of craft joined the effort. Even during a wave, they were moving through the dungeon, using the safest paths and bringing as much war material as they could carry. It would be incredibly difficult to make war during the wave, but they would find a way. They were craft. "What do you need me to do?" he asked. "Everything," she snapped, bubbling with rage. "Can't do that much. Then go back out into the tunnels and put eyes on those filthy ants. We need to know what they're doing at least." "The same as before, I would guess," he replied, then held up his hands when she glared at him. "I'll go. Not to worry, I'll be gone in an hour." His reputation was rising amongst the craft, especially as a crafty scout who could get things done, do the dirty work. When the others arrived, it would be his report they listened to. Then, when it came time to plan the assault, he would be in prime position. He would be ascendant.